Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here. Our guest today is Molly Whalen, and this is Smart Business Moves. Hey, Molly, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Very much appreciate you joining us today. This is month of August is Leadership Month for Smart Business Moves, and you're going to be sharing some useful information for us in the area of leadership.
I am. I'm excited to be with everyone here, and so it's great to join you all and talk about self leadership.
Um, you are in the residential cleaning industry yourself, aren't you? You own a business?
I do. I own Mountain Maids. It's a housekeeping company, residential cleaning company here in Bozeman, Montana. We have two branch offices. We have one in Bozeman and one in Big Sky. We employ about 24 full-time year-round employees between the two divisions. We have company vehicles. We go out in teams, and we've been doing this for about 15 years.
Wow. So, I mean, is this what Montana looks like?
It does. That is the Big Sky area. That's just off the road, and and with the river right there. So it's absolutely beautiful.
That is crazy. That is what time of year is that? Is that summertime?
No, that's more fall because the wheatgrass and the snow in the mountains. So that's going into, we have a very short summer season. So we always say we have 3 months of summer and 9 months, or I'm sorry, 9 months of winter and 3 months of family and friends. We don't have summer unless family and friends are here. So yeah.
So, I think this is your first time joining us on Smart Business Moves, isn't it?
It is, and I appreciate it. I've spoken before at ARCSI's conventions. I've done, leadership classes, employee engagement classes. So it's great to be here with you.
Awesome. Awesome. How did you wind up starting your cleaning business, or how did you get into the industry?
It's serendipitous. It just kind of fell into my lap. There was an owner that was doing it all. They were out in the field cleaning, they were booking cleans, they were doing payroll, they were just, you know, a jack of all trades, and they got burnt out. And so they decided to sell the business. And my business partner and I purchased it in 2007. And, and we never were in the field. We decided that that wasn't something we were going to do. So we hired cleaners and have never looked back. So it's been really successful. It's been a great business, extremely rewarding. I'm all about leadership and promoting a safe work environment for our employees and wanting them to grow within the company. So we have very young supervisors. I still have the very first employee I've ever had. She's still connected to me, even though she's a mom now with a couple of kids and living in Michigan. But it's wonderful to have those connections, and they're lifelong. And it's truly a pleasure to have the employees that I get to interact with.
And you've been doing this, I guess, 13, 14 years then. So that's a long time for somebody to be part of your organization. So you must be doing a lot of things right. And I'm sure that leadership is a contributing factor to that, correct?
It is. It's also how I show up. So if you're showing up in a growth mindset, even if you're dealing with the different economies from, the housing crisis to the pandemic to lack of employees, it's really important to show up in this growth mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you won't be as open and as nimble to make changes, be creative, come from a really resourceful place. And so that's what my talk's all about.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what a growth mindset is.
Yeah, so self-leadership is the ability to move yourself by being curious, by stopping judgment into a growth mindset. So if you think about it, well, we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about our mission first. So the mission is to cultivate this skill of self-leadership and to move yourself into a way of being where you're open, you're receptive, and you're able to see some of the barriers that might be showing up or some of the blocks and breaking free of those. So success today will look like how to practice this self-leadership. And it's a daily practice. It's one that we are always looking to do. And then in the next slide, if you look at that, so this is more about transformational growth-oriented learning. And so what that means is, as a business owner, and I'm sure there's many business owners online, we have many books in our libraries, right? E-Myth is one of my most favorite. It's the book that started launching my career as far as getting systems down and what have you. And then there's other books that's like the Ideal Team Player. There's all kinds of leadership books that you can read. And also you can learn about marketing from Google or online classes. All this capability of learning is transformational, right? It's at your fingertips. You can learn it anytime you want. But to really get into growth learning, and it's very difficult to do it through normal traditional learning capabilities. So what happens is, if you're basing all your learning on books, it's really hard. You'll read them. I read them all the time. The top 10 ways to show up as a leader, right? And so those top 10 ways, yes, they're very, very educational, but they don't go into how do you want to show up? What's going on with you personally? And how are you showing up? So I'll give you a perfect example. There was a teacher that was given a group of students, and she was told these students are the most brightest students they've ever had come together. This is going to be an incredible year for them, and this is a test study. And so she got them. So she showed up believing that they were the most brilliant, brightest group of students she's ever had. They excelled under her leadership. They excelled in her classroom. And then at the end of it, she found out that they were actually the children that were struggling the most, children that had been labeled by other teachers that they weren't able to learn in a traditional learning environment. And they proved it to be wrong. So when you're looking at how are you showing up as a leader in your company, how are your middle managers, your office staff, how are your employees showing up? This is what we're talking about. If you're showing up and thinking that nobody can do your job better than you, nobody can. If you're showing up that, my team doesn't know how to do marketing, they're not going to do marketing, right? And then also for yourself, if you're like, I don't know how to do marketing, and you put shame-based meaning on it, I don't know how to do marketing because I'm not good enough. And so if we go to the next slide, you'll see that a fixed mindset is a belief that our ability is fixed, our situations are fixed, and that if something is meant to be, it should be very effortless. How many of us sit there and go, well, if I was meant to be a marketer, it'd be super easy. But you know this, Tom. You've taken a lot of work and a lot of time to create this kind of marketing, right? To go live, to promote your business. It takes a lot of effort. And if we are in the belief that if it's not easy, then it's not meant to be and we're not good enough, it's a shame-based meaning on the level of identity. And examples of this, going back to like middle school kids again, is that girls tend to do this 80% more often than boys if they are in a classroom that is math or engineering, and they don't believe that they're good at it. It's because, or they don't know the answers. It's because I'm not good at it, right?
Mhm.
It's because of who I am that I don't know math. where boys more often will say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
And so it's not just gender, it's more of people that are under the perception of being less powerful, right? So think about, and this is worldwide. So think about people that come to the United States and want to work in the United States, but they perceive themselves of having less power than others. Women tend to do this because our perception is what others think, what other women think, what other men think. And so if you have a group of people that you want to empower, and they're coming as a shame-based meaning, this fixed-based meaning that I'm not good, it's because of who I am that I'm not good enough, that's really, really challenging. And that's what owners can show up as themselves that way, or their employees that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is you know this is deep. I like this though, because you sent me your deck in advance and I went through it quickly, and my initial pass was thinking that you're talking to us as like business owners, the CEOs of our company, and getting our mindset right as it pertains to us and our performance as leaders, as business owners, CEOs. But I think what you really are getting at here, or at least in part, in addition to that, we have an opportunity to help other people in our organization be the leaders that we need them to be by helping them approach problems differently and seeing their ability to, do meaningful work in our businesses in a different way.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how many business owners are out there that have middle managers and they're women, and you're wanting them to make decisions for you instead of coming to you. And women are the women that you have in those roles, they're brilliant. They are educated, they've been highly educated, they are amazing people, and yet they are afraid to make mistakes. Like, the world isn't safe to make mistakes. And if they're showing up that the world's not safe to make a mistake, what are they going to do as middle managers? They're going to constantly pull you into every decision because they don't want to make a mistake. And if they can be taught and open up the possibility that it's okay to make mistakes, right? So when we start our businesses, we're not perfect, right? We make mistakes all day long. We don't charge the right amount. We send the team to a wrong home to clean. Our vacuum doesn't work, whatever it is, right? So we're constantly imperfect. But if we're saying that there's no place for us to make mistakes, then we're showing up really differently, right? And as leaders, we show up the best that we can. But if we're coming in as a leader, if we're coming into our work environment in a fearful mode, especially like during the pandemic, it was unheard of, right? This whole idea of shutting down, and what do we do and how do we move forward? And if we're in total panic mode, what are our employees going to do? And how are they going to show up?
We started doing this show, Smart Business Moves, at the beginning of the pandemic. I guess it was March of 2020. And, nobody knew what was going on. And we used the term unprecedented event pretty much on a daily basis. We were doing this 5 days a week back then. And, we were scared. We were confused. We didn't know what, tomorrow held. But, if I hear what you're saying, it's like, okay, all that's natural, but we have to manage that in order to be the leaders that the people that need us to be leaders for them want us to be.
Right. And we also need to learn from our mistakes, right? So if we have an opportunity to say, well, we're going to try this, and it may not work, but that's okay, right? Let's be curious. Let's think outside the box. Let's do something different. I mean, how many companies pivoted? How many companies expanded, like yourself, where you came online 5 days a week to help promote others and give support. So many things were shifting so quickly. And if you sat on the sidelines in this fearful mode, it probably didn't work out very well for you. And that's how leaders are. We need to learn from our mistakes, be transparent, be curious, stop judgment, because so many times we feel like we're the only ones that can do it right. Right. And other times I hear business owners say, well, I have this, imposter syndrome. And I'm just waiting for somebody to pull the curtain back and see that I'm really not the leader, not the business person that I present myself to be. And so can you imagine if you believe that you have imposter syndrome and you're just waiting to be found out, how are you showing up? How are you showing up on a daily basis to your team, to your company, to your clients, if you're always waiting for somebody to prove that you're not successful, intelligent, brilliant, and imperfect, right?
Now, I know that you spend time in this world studying this and like doing some coaching in this area, the imposter syndrome, what you're describing. How how pervasive is that?
It's unbelievable how many people experience it. I was a part of a program here in Montana where I was a mentor, and it was wonderful. I became Mentor of the Year, which was fabulous. But so many of the women that we were mentoring had this feeling, this deep-seated feeling that they were imposters and somebody would figure it out. And it's amazing. They had master's degrees. They spoke several languages. They started companies. They were just these amazing, brilliant people, and yet walking around in this fear-based, just waiting to be found out. Somebody that's really famous talked about this, Michelle Pfeiffer, this beautiful, gorgeous actress who always waited for the curtain to be pulled back and say, you're really a phony at acting. So it is prevalent. Many people experience it. And if you don't ever let yourself be imperfect, if you don't feel like you have a space to be able to fail, if society's not and culture doesn't allow you to fail because you're always being judged, you're being judged by colleagues or your family or yourself, which is even the worst part. How can you show up in this really great, creative, powerful self that you are?
I guess the saying "fake it till you make it," and there's a lot of people.
Let's go to that slide. Are we there yet? Yeah, almost. But I love that fake it till you make it. Hold on to that thought because
Okay,
it's coming up. And so I love that you presented that. But I've been talking about this a lot. Why does it show up? And this slide is really talking about it. Just that we put this shame-based meaning. It's because of who I am. I'm not loved or wanted. It's because who I am. I'm not smart enough, good enough, things like that. So let's go to the next slide since we've kind of, we'll speed up. And oh my gosh, do you guys remember Stuart Smalley of Daily Affirmations of Saturday Night Live, where he would look into a mirror? Do you remember this,
yeah,
Tom?
this is that's a very young Al Franken.
It is. It is a very young one. And he would say, I am good enough. I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me. And so these statements really don't work, right? It's like you can look in the mirror and you can pump yourself up, but at the end of the day, you don't feel it, right?
Mhm.
You really don't feel it that, you know, other people will tell you all day long, you're being too hard on yourself. You need to accept yourself as you are. And it's really interesting. People of lesser power can go in and go in and promote other people brilliantly. They can get them hired. They can get them a raise, but they can't do it for themselves. Right. And so even if you try to pump yourself up, it doesn't work. So yes, self-love is really important. And and accepting yourself for who you are and knowing your limitations. Yes, it's very, very important. But trying to fake it till you make it just doesn't work. It's not, that isn't it. So at all, if that makes sense. So, um, so it's really important to, so I'll give you a great example. This is a wonderful example. So I wanted to write a book, right? And so I was writing this book and I read it. I read what I wrote. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to want to read this, right? This is terrible, right? And then I thought, oh no, maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Oh gosh darn it, I'm a really good writer. And gosh darn it, people are going to like it. None of them worked, right? You're like, oh, this isn't working. But if you decide to actually put yourself out there and you say, I can be perfectly imperfect, and my book might not be perfect for everyone, but it's really good for those that it is good for. And that's totally different, right? It's a totally different thought. But if I sit there and try to fake it, it just doesn't feel good, and you'll stop and you won't write, and it's a blank canvas. It's kind of like the story of you order shoes on Amazon and Amazon sends you the wrong pair of shoes and they don't fit. Does that mean you're not supposed to walk? Right?
Mhm.
It just doesn't go together. Right? Be imperfect, show up creative, show up from your resourceful place. And you're really powerful people. Every one of you are. And if you don't know how to do something, you can learn it. It's not because of who you are that you can't do it. Life isn't easy, right? Owning a business isn't easy. Doing this live webinar wasn't easy. Things were crashing, right? You can be perfectly imperfect. It still happens, right?
You I've seen the term in your deck, and just talking, here a little bit about missing development. So is that, could you explain a little bit about what that is? And that, I presume, is a root cause of the problem that we're trying to fix.
Yeah, and the missing development is no matter how much you read, no matter how much you read on leadership, no matter what you do, if you're showing up from a place where you are shame based, I'm not good enough and it's because of who I am, or you're showing up in isolation, like you're doing this alone, that you give and you give and you give and you can't give anymore, yet people don't seem to accept what you're giving, or you're showing up in lack of resources, lack of time, money, um, knowledge, whatever it may be. I mean, how many entrepreneurs say, I need 27 hours a day? I
Mhm.
don't have enough time. And so if you're showing up, that is the developmental opportunity, is to change that thought process. What would it be if you did have enough time? Because you actually do. And what would it be if you actually gave what people wanted? So many times as business owners, we think we know what other people need, right? We think we know what our team needs as developmental skills. We think we know what our clients need. And then there's a disconnect, right? You're like, oh, I have all these employees and I give them and I give them and I give and I give. And they just take and they take and they take and they take, and they don't appreciate what I do. And it's terrible. I can't give anymore. I mean, how many business owners feel that way? Right. And
That
so,
is not uncommon. You
yeah,
hear that all the time.
you do. And you're like, and the people do all kinds of things. Like business owners have games and they have snack bars and they have, sushi Fridays, or they have whatever they do, right? And it never is enough. Well, maybe it's never enough because maybe that's not what your team needs from you. And if you're not curious and you're not asking what people actually need from you, then how do you know?
But coming at it from, this place of missing development, and we have to be the leaders, I guess, that our people need us to be. And if we're not coming out at the right place, what are the tricks? How do we get our head screwed on straight so we can be that leader?
So the best way to do it is a lot of times is to break free of these inner barriers that I call them, where you're feeling isolated, you're feeling shame, you're feeling lack of resources, and finding a coach to help break free of those barriers, because a lot of us cannot self actualize by ourselves. We don't even know we're doing it. It's like these deep grooves in a record, and they go around and around and around, and we never jump out of it. And so the best way to do it is to find somebody that can actually amplify you, see your brilliance, see the possibilities, and help you break free of this feeling of lack, whatever it is, or fear. If fear shows up, that's a great way to say, oh, I'm in a fixed mindset, right? If you feel that no matter what you give, it's not enough, that's a fixed mindset. If you feel that you're a burden to others, that's a fixed mindset. So all these are fixed mindsets that are easily broken free, coming from somebody that can help you, or trying to center yourself into your power source. Where are you resourceful? Where are you creative? Where are you curious? Right? So what are you good at? All of us have something we're really good at, right?
Right.
Something, right? So whether it's writing, or whether it's talking one-on-one, or it's cooking meals, or it's dance, or whatever it is, we're really good at something. And so that's where our power source can be, is feeling into when we're really powerful and we're resourceful. We're not coming from a fear-based or shame or lack. Then we can start to get curious about some of these stories. So I'll share with you a perfect story I signed up for personally, and I can't believe I did, and I'm going to share this live. But I signed up when I had my first child, mother's guilt, right? So before I had children, never even knew what mother's guilt was. I lived a beautiful life. Had this wonderful pregnancy, I had this newborn child, and all of a sudden mother's guilt's presented to me. And I signed the dotted line, right? Signed, sealed, and delivered. Ate it with a big fat spoon. Mother's guilt is you can't win, right? Your child should play soccer or not. Should I work? Should I not? Should I have my kid go to Harvard? And if he doesn't, then I failed. So it's this limbo of you can't ever be right. And I lived in it. And it showed up all the time. And then through this program, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have lived in mother's guilt. Now I just see it. And I'm like, what would it mean to be perfectly imperfect mom? Right? Where I don't know all the answers, where maybe my children can do what they want, and who cares what society says? Just because my son doesn't go to Harvard doesn't mean he isn't brilliant. Right. And so if you're showing up in this very different place, this place of being imperfect, doors open, opportunities open. You don't beat yourself up anymore. And I lived in it for 20 years, 22 years, actually.
So it's a lot bigger than just feeling better about yourself. I mean, that's part of it, but you're able to function better. You're able to, for your own self, as well as, the other stakeholders, the other people, as the CEO of your business, the other people that are counting on you being the leader that you need to be. Once you can find that place, you're able to do the things, you're able to be the leader that they need you to be.
Absolutely. And saying that, oh gosh, I'm a good mom. Gosh darn, I'm a good mom, like Stuart Smalley. It didn't work, for 22 years, but breaking free of it, and it's rapid. And then you start to see it, and it changes everything. Changes your personal life, it changes your life with yourself, and it changes your life in your business. And you can do this with your team as well.
how does this affect your team? If you're in this place and you've got the fixed mindset, is this, you know, you're pulling your team's performance down too with that, I presume.
You are. So if you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, so I'll just say Josie didn't show up to work. It's so Josie, and I can't believe she didn't show up again. And then what are you going to think when she walks in the door the next day?
Hmm.
Right? You already have this judgment about Josie, right? And you don't know what happened. And it could be that she's lied to you and all kinds of things, and we could get into all of that. But if you're just looking at her as a human being, right? And that maybe something did happen and maybe she actually couldn't get to work, and you've already placed judgment on her before she can even let you know. So how are you going to show up? Snarky, sarcastic, like, oh, great to see you, Josie. I mean, what is she thinking? She's like, you don't know what happened, right? And so we don't want to be railroaded and we don't want to be run over, but we also want to treat people as human beings. And I think when you're in a fixed mindset towards your team, judging your team, you really are showing up as your team's an object instead of a human.
You're basically putting them in a negative place, in a sports analogy perspective. You're basically telling them that they're going to lose, that you're
Correct.
not putting them in a winning mindset. There was a
Right.
gee Back in the 70s, there was a football coach, John McKay. He was a coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they lost a whole bunch of games. And in one of the games, he was being interviewed, and a reporter asked him, how did he feel about his team's execution? And he said, I'm in favor of it. And, that's kind of funny, but he's actually telling them that he doesn't see them as winners.
Mhm. Right.
And that would be a manifestation of a fixed mindset.
It is. It's a part of that. It's holding judgment, right? So it's holding judgment as he is a coach, his abilities as a coach, his abilities to formulate a team that is cohesive, that wants to win, wants to play together. So if you're seeing any kind of discord in your team, even if they're individuals or group team based, if you're seeing a discord, there's something going on, right? And as a leader, breaking free of it and helping them to break free, because they could be in a fixed mindset, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, well, she doesn't like me. And I'm like, well, are you sure she doesn't like you? Or does she not like your performance? Right? Because it's very different.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, well, my client, who I clean for, my client doesn't like me. Well, does she not like you, or does she not like your performance? Does she not like you because of how you respond to her? Right? So what's really at play? What's really showing up? And if you show up that somebody doesn't like you, then others aren't safe, right? So um, others aren't safe. And if others aren't safe, and I'm going to go in and clean their home, and that client isn't safe because she doesn't like me, what kind of clean am I going to give that client? I'm going to try to get in and out as fast as I can, and it's going to be horrible. Right. And so, like, there's no possibilities. And then this vicious cycle of the client complaining, and she's like, I knew she'd complain, she always complains. I mean, it's just this really vicious cycle. And so stopping that kind of thought process, and what would it be if she actually did like you? And what if she does like you, she just wants you to clean with more finesse or more detail or whatever it is? How does that change the scenario? Right?
We have a comment here, which I think is touching upon the heart of where we're coming from, or at least it's a corollary. Janet says it sounds like a growth mindset has a lot to do with approaching self and others from a place of compassion instead of judgment. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Because judgment cuts people off at their knees, right? And compassion opens up possibilities.
And if you're the leader trying to get, is maximum performance from your team,
Mhm.
if you can show compassion, that's I guess you're going to get a better outcome than being judgmental.
Right, right. I mean, how many people want to work for somebody that's judgmental, especially in this day and age when they don't have to, they have so many choices of places to work, right? You always hear people quit because of management, not because of the job.
Yeah, you quit your manager, your
Hmm.
supervisor, rather than the job. That's a commonly held belief. I
Right.
see that. But it's really easy to fall into the whole judgmental thing. Tom never comes to work 5 days a week, and you just
Hmm.
kind of assume that's going to be the case, and you really aren't approaching it by asking the questions, being curious, trying to, be sympathetic. You just kind of go to the negative assumption.
Right.
That's common.
It's really common, and it's too bad. It's
So,
really too bad.
you
Hmm.
really touched upon 2022 with the labor market and everything that's happened since
Hmm.
COVID. More so now than maybe in the past, understanding this concept and leveraging it to your benefit and the benefit of those in your organization is probably more important now than ever with what we're
Yeah.
dealing with.
Well, and it starts with you, right? So if you start to break free of your fixed mindset and go into a growth mindset, and if we flip this slide really quickly, I wanted to see what the next slide was. Let's go. So some of the fixed ones, these are really helpful. I'm either good at it or I'm not. And a growth mindset is that, I can use failures as opportunities, like what we were talking about. And then another fixed one, I'm always bad at making decisions. I mean, how many times have we heard this, even from our office people or our teams in the business, or even business owners that are like, I'm just bad at making decisions. And instead, you can say, I can learn and grow from my challenges, right? If you can feel into that, I'm bad at making decisions, or I can learn and grow from my challenges. Do you feel the difference? Right? And it starts to go from your head into your body. And when you start to feel it into your body, that becomes a growth mindset.
Yeah. It's that whole thing, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And we have choices that we can make where we can make good things happen out of bad situations if we choose to.
Right. And then the next slide, if you go into that, these are the ways to jump into that growth mindset, to be curious, right? I wonder how this might look like in a new creative way. Suspending judgment, which is really important, and and committing to find a different way, and then using your creativity and resourcefulness. So those are really, really important actionable items. So if you start to feel that you're not curious, then you know that you might be in a fixed mindset. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Hmm.
Asking questions, even if you're just talking to yourself, trying to learn and figure out and collect more data.
Right. Right.
So you have had like formal training, and this is a passion of yours, isn't it?
It is. So I've got my master's in coaching, and then I've owned my cleaning business for 15 years. So I've been coaching women and men for 15 years, wanting to promote their development, growth, their leadership. And it's really interesting. The coaching has shifted me more into a place of self-actualizing and helping others to self-actualize versus how I've done it in the past, where it's been quite linear, right? So if you want employee engagement, these are the steps, and it's very linear. This program that I now offer really gets into the heart of, why am I showing up this way? What are the old stories? And how are these old stories holding me back? And it's very individual, and it can be in a group setting, but there's so many things that hold people back from being everything that they possibly can be. And can you imagine if your leaders of your company could step into themselves and feel like it's safe to fail and it's safe to make decisions, even if they may not be perfect? What could they do? Right? It gets you out of the office, for one, and gets you your freedom.
So coaching, you coach like business owners, CEOs, you also coach their teams. You can do it individually, or you can coach the whole team as a group.
I can. And it's interesting to do a whole team, a whole growth, because they get to hear each other and they get to hear what's been holding them back. And then there creates this space and this safety of compassion and understanding and and cohesiveness. Like it starts to break, and it's really a beautiful thing to watch.
Wow. So if someone wants more information or wants to reach out to you to find out more about this, what's the best way to do that, Molly?
They can email me, they can phone me, text me. My website is still under, I'm reorganizing it as I speak, but please feel free to reach out to me via phone or email. I would love to talk to you, love to work with you, in whatever capacity you're wanting to do. I have programs that's all on Zoom. There's full day coaching. There's 6-month coaching. Those are more with owners and CEOs, but it's a lot to invest 6 months into your team. But a full day with your team can do wonders.
And you've been doing this for a while, and you've seen, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do this, but I mean, this is a real return on investment type activity. I mean,
It is. If you want to get out of the office, if you want to get out of the drama, if you want your team to do what you want them to do, and make decisions and be independent and not have the drama, absolutely. And also for owners, a lot of people that don't feel like they have power play really small, right? And
mhm.
so if you have a cleaning company, you may be in the field, or you may just have gotten in the office, but you're playing it small. And what do you really want? Right. So like you, Tom, I know that you've expanded your business and grown it to this amazing company and added the software program. How many others have big dreams and they're held back because they think, one, somebody else has done it, or maybe somebody else is better, or I want to play small so I can control, what I have. So can you imagine if you open that up and actually played big? And a lot of people will shrink back and go, oh, I don't want to do it. But that's something I can help owners do as well, is quit playing small.
And for some, they started this journey as an entrepreneur thinking big, and then the weight of the world starts beating them down, and they kind of pull back and start thinking small. And you can help people, I presume, get back to embracing the vision that they had when they started the journey.
Absolutely. And can you imagine when you first started the journey, all your dreams, all of your desires, and then what bogs you down? What holds you back, right? Not empowering your team or feeling like, well, I'm not good at marketing, so I'm not going to market myself. I'm not going to put myself out there, or gosh, people don't want to hear from me, or I'm burdening people by calling clients and saying, hey, I haven't been in for a while. Would you like my services again? If you're showing up with these fixed mindsets, it's going to be really, really challenging for you.
Well, Molly, this was some really awesome information, and it's you know a lot of smart business moves. We talking about the nuts and bolts of running a business, and this is out there a little more conceptual, but honestly, in the whole scheme of things, this is could be a game changer for a lot of
Mhm.
companies.
Yeah, I know it is.
Well, much appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing your time with us today. This is your first time on Smart Business Moves.
Mhm.
Let's do ourselves a favor here and promise that it won't be the last. I'd like to hear more about your programs and what you're doing, and perspectives on leadership and how this can help businesses grow, in the residential cleaning industry. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with us before we end the show?
No, I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and know that you are brilliant and imperfect at the same time, and go crush it.
Great. Well, thank you,
Yes.
Molly.
Thank you.
We're going to call it a wrap for today on Smart Business Moves. We will be back next Wednesday, 5 o'clock Eastern. Guys, take care.